2 meters, 29 centimeters. The second pick in the draft, a $44 million contract. But that's not what he was remembered for. One leap by Michael Jordan turned a professional career into an eternal meme. And then, just an ordinary bike ride near his home. A full-speed impact and a body that had withstood the battle under the NBA rim for 20 years stopped obeying forever in a single second. How a giant ended up confined to a wheelchair, you'll find out by the end of this video. Georgetown, Utah, the early 1970s. In a small Mormon town, in a family with deep religious roots, a boy is born who was destined to become one of the tallest men in the history of professional sports.
If you enjoy, just like I do, discovering the real stories behind NBA legends, their incredible highs, tragic downfalls, and the little-known facts that are rarely talked about today, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps the channel grow and makes new videos possible. Thank you. Now, let's continue.
Even in early childhood, his parents noticed that their son was not growing like other children. Doctors threw up their hands, neighbors were astonished, and the boy himself just kept stretching upward, as if nature had decided to conduct an experiment specifically on him.
By the age of 14, Shawn Bradley towered a full head above his classmates, and his gait was already different from that of ordinary teenagers. His overly long limbs required special coordination that had to be developed literally from scratch. Basketball entered his life almost by accident. School coaches, of course, could not overlook a teenager of such stature. Nature itself seemed to be pushing him toward this sport. But interestingly, Bradley was not just a tall and clumsy giant, as are often found among overly tall youths. He turned out to be surprisingly agile, with decent coordination and a natural feel for the court that usually takes years of practice to develop. By the time he graduated from high school, his height had reached 2 meters, 29 centimeters, a figure that in itself sounded like an anomaly even for professional basketball. Rumors about the giant from Utah quickly spread across the country. College scouts began to take notice of him even before he received his diploma, and sports journalists were already discussing what his future in big-time basketball might hold. It seemed that his path forward was clearly predetermined. A college career at a strong university, impressive play in front of NBA scouts, and then the draft and professional fame. Many talented young centers followed this exact route, and nothing suggested that Bradley's story would be any different. But then faith intervened, something that mattered in his family no less than sports. Like many young people raised in the traditions of the Mormon Church, Bradley decided to embark on a 2-year missionary service. For a promising basketball player of his level, such a choice looked almost insane from a sporting perspective. To interrupt his career precisely when college interest in him had peaked, when every month of delay could cost him missed opportunities. He left for Australia and spent 2 years away from his familiar basketball life, without serious training under professional coaches, without constant monitoring of his physical condition, without high-level game practice. During this time, he engaged in religious service, helped people, and studied a way of life completely different from the gyms and stands. When he returned home, many experts expected to see an athlete who had lost his form during years of inactivity, who had grown lazy physically and mentally lagged behind his peers who had continued to progress on American college courts. But his natural gifts prevailed. His height, wingspan, innate coordination, and perseverance in training allowed Bradley to return to playing shape fairly quickly, and the basketball world once again spoke of him as a future star capable of changing the balance of power in the league. The year 1993 proved truly pivotal in his destiny.
The NBA draft, the second overall pick, right after Chris Webber, a future league legend and one of the most dazzling forwards of his generation. The Philadelphia 76ers made a serious investment in the young center, signing him to a long-term 8-year contract worth a total of $44 million, a truly colossal sum at the time.
At 21, Shawn Bradley became a millionaire overnight, a man whose name was on everyone's lips in sports America. Along with the money and fame came enormous expectations that weighed on the young player's shoulders almost more heavily than the physical loads on the court. Philadelphia fans wanted to see a new dominant center capable of single-handedly changing the outcome of games merely by his presence under the rim, in the mold of the great centers of past decades. His first games presented an extremely mixed picture. On one hand, his incredible wingspan allowed Bradley to block shots where other league players wouldn't even attempt to reach the ball, creating for opponents a constant sense of threat under their own basket. On the other hand, physically, he remained too fragile for the real NBA, where a brutal power struggle raged under the rim every second among heavyweights ready to literally fight for every rebound and every position. It was during this period that an episode occurred that haunted Bradley throughout the rest of his career, and even long after it ended. Michael Jordan, then at the absolute peak of his legendary form, scored a spectacular dunk over Bradley, a moment that became a true sensation in sports news at the time. Television showed this clip over and over in various highlights and compilations, and decades later, the internet and social media turned that short fragment into an endless viral meme that still pops up in users' feeds around the world. This single episode, lasting just a fraction of a second, overshadowed for the general public years of serious, thoughtful work by the center on the court. Few casual viewers later recalled that Bradley ranked confidently among the league's best players at his position in career blocked shots, or that professional coaches highly valued him precisely for his ability to protect his own rim, where many other tall centers simply lost their way under the pressure of attacking opponents. But the image of that center who got dunked on by Jordan stuck to him permanently, becoming a kind of brand that followed the athlete literally everywhere. With that brand, he had to keep living, proving on the court a completely different version of himself, a version of a reliable, skilled, selfless player, not just an unfortunate extra in someone else's bright moment of glory. His career, meanwhile, continued to develop, albeit not as rapidly as many had predicted at the time of the draft.
The move to the New Jersey Nets gave Bradley a new experience of playing in a different system under different coaches among new teammates. Then came a move to the Dallas Mavericks, where Bradley finally found the team in which he could fully realize himself as a professional player. It was in Dallas that he spent the best years of his professional life, gradually becoming one of the most reliable shot-blocking defenders in the entire league. A player whose presence under the rim made opponents carefully think through every attack. The statistics from those years spoke for themselves with striking eloquence. Thousands of blocked shots over his career, steady, consistent play season after season without sharp drops in productivity, and genuine respect from teammates and coaching staff who valued his dedication. But even these truly strong years passed somewhat in the shadow of other, brighter stars of the Mavericks at the time. The general public traditionally remembered forwards and point guards, the authors of spectacular shots and clutch points, while the tall center, methodically performing his unglamorous but critically important work under the rim, remained a second-tier figure, reliable, steady, but by no means dazzling in the eyes of ordinary fans who followed games through highlights. In 2005, after 12 long seasons at the professional level, Shawn Bradley made the difficult but measured decision to end his playing career. Years of constant physical strain, injuries, recoveries, and new strains had taken their toll, and the athlete decided that the time had come for a new chapter in life, away from the demanding schedule of the NBA. He returned to his native Utah, where his journey had begun in childhood.
He bought his own ranch, devoted himself seriously to his family. By that time, he had several children growing up, and Bradley gladly immersed himself in the quiet, measured life of a farmer and father. Life flowed unhurriedly, far from packed arenas, blinding camera flashes, and the constant attention of sports journalists. From the outside, it seemed that the hardest part for this man was already behind him, the draft with its colossal, inflated expectations.
the ill-fated viral dunk. Years of hard struggle for a solid spot under the rim among more celebrated centers. All of this was gradually turning into pleasant memories, recalled only by devoted longtime fans who collected player cards from the 1990s. But fate had a trial in store for Bradley incomparable to any, even the toughest, game of his entire professional career. January 2021, the small town of St. George, Utah.
An ordinary bike ride, of which Bradley had taken many over the years since ending his playing career, a familiar way to stay in shape and simply enjoy the quiet life away from sports arenas. He was riding along a road not far from his home, a familiar route he had surely traveled dozens of times before. And suddenly, a car struck him from behind at high speed, catching both the cyclist and the driver of the vehicle completely off guard. The force of the impact was truly devastating. A body accustomed to the colossal physical demands of professional sports, a body capable of withstanding power battles under the rim against the league's strongest centers, proved completely powerless against the metal of an automobile and its accelerating speed. The first minutes after the collision became a true dividing line, splitting Bradley's life into a clear before and a painful after. The paramedics who arrived at the scene fought desperately to stabilize the injured athlete right there, knowing that time was measured in minutes. And the diagnosis delivered later within the hospital walls turned out to be a true sentence for the active, physically demanding life Bradley had led for so many decades. The spinal cord injury was so severe and extensive that any talk of a full recovery of previous mobility was simply out of the question, as doctors warned the family almost immediately. Paralysis affected his body below the chest. A man whose towering height had once served as his primary professional advantage on the basketball court was now confined to a wheelchair, completely dependent on the help of family and medical staff. Just imagine the poignant contrast. 2 meters, 29 centimeters of solid muscle and bone. A body capable in its prime of reaching up to the rim with one motion and blocking an opponent's shot. And then, sudden total immobility. Forced dependence on outside help for the simplest everyday tasks that had once been performed automatically without a second thought. Rehabilitation stretched on for long months, and then years of grueling, exhausting work on his own body. Doctors cautiously spoke only of partial restoration of some lost bodily functions, but a full return to previous physical activity and mobility was no longer under any circumstances. Psychologically, this period was perhaps even harder than the physical recovery itself. A man accustomed throughout his entire adult life to complete independence, to the status of a successful professional athlete, to constant control over his own powerful body, was forced to essentially relearn how to exist under new, unfamiliar conditions, in a body that no longer responded to familiar brain commands the way it used to. Bradley, however, did not hide from public attention, withdraw into himself, or avoid journalists, as often happens with people who have experienced such tragedy. On the contrary, he began to speak openly and honestly about his new condition, the difficulties of daily adaptation to changed circumstances, and what it was like to lose control over his own body overnight after decades during which that very body had been his main source of strength, fame, and livelihood. This disarming candor sparked a genuine wave of heartfelt support from fans across the country and from former league colleagues, many of whom now remembered him no longer through the prism of that ill-fated viral dunk, but as a man who displayed true courage and fortitude of spirit in the face of a real-life tragedy. Today, Shawn Bradley continues to live in his native Utah, surrounded by the care of his family, which has become his main support in his new, difficult life circumstances. He regularly participates in various events related to supporting people who have suffered spinal injuries,
readily shares his own story with those who have faced similar severe trials, and strives to instill in them hope for continuing a full life even after such upheavals.
His NBA career, for all its internal contradictions, for all its ambiguous moments and inflated expectations, still remains a significant and notable page in the league's history of the 1990s and 2000s, an era when basketball had not yet become as globalized and commercialized as it is today. But the story of this remarkable athlete is important not only for his blocked shot statistics or the amounts of signed contracts. It eloquently reminds us all that even true greatness on the court, even the unique physical gifts that once made the entire sports world envious, in no way protect a person from the cruel blows that ordinary everyday life can deliver at the most unexpected moment.
The fate of Shawn Bradley is a true story of a meteoric rise, the mockery of fickle fortune, a sudden and utterly unpredictable fall that could not have been foreseen, and at the same time, a story of genuine strength of the human spirit, which allowed him to find new meaning in existence precisely where all seemed hopelessly lost. If Shawn Bradley's story truly moved you, be sure to watch other videos on our channel dedicated to the difficult fates of the bright players of that unforgettable era. Links to them will appear on your screen right now.